All right, today we're talking about how to run a technology company and really endure and be resilient over a long period of time, over decades. My guest today is Nathan Whittacre. He's got one of those companies that is a technology company that's innovated over time. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show, and if you've listened before, you know that we've had interesting and smart CEOs every week from Netflix, Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree. Lots of great episodes in the archive, so go check those out. And before we get into this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast and content marketing. We are an easy button for any B2B business to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, accountability, full execution using our platform, Podcast Copilot. So if you want to learn more about what we do, you can go to our website, rise25.com, or email us at support@rise25.com. All right. My guest here is Nathan Whittacre. He's the president and CEO of Stimulus Technologies. It's a company that he founded way back in the mid-90s alongside his father and his brother. He started from a garage in Henderson, Nevada, and he's grown it into becoming a leading provider of IT services and cloud computing, voice over internet protocol, internet services across multiple different states. And so we're going to hear about his story of enduring and being resilient over time. But I always love to start by getting to know my guests a little bit about what they were like when they were a kid. And you got this crazy story. You grew up in kind of a rural area, and I guess there wasn't a candy store anywhere around. And so you decided at the age of 11, I think it was, to basically start a candy store out of your house. So Nathan, tell us about that.
Thanks, John, for letting me be here. It's a pleasure of mine to be here with you and your guests. It's interesting. My parents were both business owners. I saw them running businesses, growing up, and wanted to take part of it. In our neighborhood, there wasn't an option for the kids to go to a local candy store or convenience shop, and saw the opportunity to, sell candy and pop and different things to my friends. And my mom taught me how to buy at wholesale and sell this candy for a profit to, neighbors and friends. And, eventually grew it as an 11-year-old to selling about $200 a week in candy out of my house. It had, 20 or 30 different types of items, from, Snickers bars to baseball cards and soda and popsicles.
Was it all like in a little corner of your living room by the front door, and people knock on the door and come and buy candy? Or
that's it. Did you stop by? I mean, you saw. That's exactly what it was. So I had a little closet off the front door. People would knock on the door after school and, buy the candy. My mom made me run it like a business. I had a paper ledger. I would have to record my sales every day, do inventory every week, and as went to buy the candy or whatever at the local Smart and Final, I'd have to, make sure that I had enough profit from the week to go buy new supplies. And I still have these ledgers. It's pretty cool to go back and look what, 11-year-old.
Oh, that's so cool. Doing. You got to like frame one of these ledgers and put it on the wall. I think that'd be great inspiration.
Be cool.
But in an unfortunate case of government overreach, you got shut down. What happened here?
I think a few of the neighborhood parents were frustrated with their kids spending their lunch money on candy rather than lunch. And
the parents narked on you?
They did.
Oh my gosh.
And so it took, I guess, about 6 months. There was some complaints filed to the business licensing division of the city. And the inspectors sat on it for 6 months because nobody wanted to go shut down a 12-year-old kid selling candy out of his house.
I hope it wasn't high priority. Jeez.
Yeah, so eventually they did. I wasn't home, but they came and knocked on the door and they said, you need to have a business license to sell out of your house. We need you to collect sales tax on the candy and things that you're selling. But the problem is in your area, you can't have a retail business operating out of a house. So you either need to open up a store somewhere and operate it that way or shut down. And my parents were like, well, what about a lemonade stand? What about these lemonade stands? They said, well, those are illegal too. I don't see them arresting any 5-year-old selling
No.
lemonade, but yeah, they shut me down.
That is brutal,
So
man. That's unfortunate that they did that. But you actually did. Another thing you did. I think this was at high school age. You ran a bulletin board system. So this is kind of early internet days. Um, and I participated in bulletin boards like in the mid '90s and things. I didn't really see the business opportunity at the time. So how did it become a business for you?
little bit of a business. I would charge people a few dollars a month, from a subscription model to be a member and access through the bulletin board. It was a system called FidoNet. This was pre-internet. So if you wanted to send a message to a user on another bulletin board anywhere in the world, you could type up that message, and then overnight the modems would call each other and send these messages. And so the next day you'd log in and have a reply from somebody, in
Wow.
I don't know, in Sweden or something like that. And,
Yeah.
and so that's how the system worked, and charge a small fee to be part of the BBS. Also, we'd store files, shareware type files that people could download and use. And
So
I was
it's one part Reddit, it's one part Dropbox, it's one part Google Cloud Computing. It's like all
yeah.
this early stuff.
Yeah, it was, and it was really interesting. I mean, some of these BBSs made pretty good money. It's again before the internet was really a thing for individual users. People were paying, 25, $30 a month to be part of a BBS, be part of these communities. They could play games online. And then that eventually for companies turned into being a dial-up internet service provider. They just converted over their modems to provide dial-up internet.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's changed now, over the years, but that was kind of the precursor to dial-up internet. And then
Yeah.
AOL and Prodigy came along, and CompuServe and some of these very early.
Yeah.
Technically, they were BBSs, but the internet took over all of that eventually in the late 90s.
So were you like playing around with computers at a young age, figuring all
Four
this stuff
years
out?
old.
4 years
4 years
old.
old. Yeah, my brother and I, we were really, loved technology, thought it was cool. My brother was 7 years older than me, so he was more involved with it. But my parents bought us our first computer when I was 4. My brother was 11, and we would just sit there and try to figure out how to make it work. We would get these magazines that had examples of code, and we would just type in the code, and that's how we would be able to play video games. That's what we wanted to do, is play video games. And this was pre Atari 2600, the original video game console, pre Nintendo. And we just sit there and figure out how to code these games. And
Wow.
I was a nerd. Okay, you asked me what I
Let's
was
cut to
like
the
when I was a
chase.
little kid. I was a nerd. Let's just keep it straight.
I mean, in retrospect, the nerds took over the asylum, so to speak. So, and Bill Gates just put out his biography. I just saw advertised. So, one of the biggest nerds of all. And at one point, I don't know if he still is, but at one point, the richest man in the world. So you kind of, I guess your parents nurtured this interest that you had in technology. And then at what point does it become like an actual business? At what point does it become Stimulus Technologies?
I was working for a small computer store when I was in high school. And the owner of the store was a professor at the local university. So it was a part-time gig for him. We would build computers, help other businesses out with creating small networks. The professor decided that he wanted to focus on his teaching, and then he was a magician. So he wanted to focus on his magic shows. So he decided to shut the store down. And I went home to my dad and my brother after I found this out, made the announcement that they were closing the store. I said, we could do this. Why don't we start our own computer store?
And you're
We
in high
could.
school at the time?
I was at high school.
Okay.
It was between my junior and senior year of high school.
Okay. And by the way, you said your parents had businesses also. Were they in retail? Because it seemed like your mom knew stuff about inventory and stuff.
Yeah, so they sold flooring
Okay.
and window covering. So that was their primary business.
Okay.
And they also owned a ServiceMaster franchise.
Okay.
one of the
So then
largest.
you coming home at 17 years old and saying, let's open a computer store or reopen or buy this computer store probably didn't seem as crazy, or did it still seem crazy to them?
Didn't seem crazy to them.
Oh.
They knew what it took to run a business, and they wanted to be involved, but they wanted it to be a family business, and so we spent a lot of time as a family deciding what this business would look like and how it would be set up. And, especially me, I was 17 years old. My brother was in college. We didn't have much experience of actually running a business, other than, just these hobby businesses that we had started. But my parents had pretty good experience, the good and the bad. So it wasn't far-fetched for us to do this, and it was a good opportunity for us for my brother and I to pay our way through college, as we did this, and we worked out of my brother's garage, building this from
So you
scratch.
ended up buying it from the owner.
Just more or less inventory. So
Okay.
we bought like five of their customers, their business clients came over to us, and then bought their tools and some of their inventory.
Did it remain like a brick and mortar store? Or did it eventually morph into more of a B2B business?
So we shut down or we didn't take over the brick and mortar store. So
Okay.
we moved into my brother's garage, and we would do on-site support for our clients. So we would build the computers. It was mostly, building computers and then supporting them on site. So we build the computers in his garage, take them out to clients' offices or houses, install them, set them up, connect them as on a network. And we didn't have a brick and mortar store, and actually we never have. Even 30 years later, we
Yeah.
don't have a retail computer location.
Well, probably a good thing because there aren't a lot of those, right?
No,
Uh, and so you decide to focus kind of on the B2B piece. Oh, and so like in the mid 90s, this was a time period where it wasn't easy to get computers. Computers weren't always sold as one complete package. And I've interviewed some people that had similar types of companies, and then Dell came along, Gateway came along, and really kind of displaced that business. Did you experience that as well?
I mean, certainly the building of computers, was replaced a lot by these large manufacturers, and today we've joined them. I mean, we're a Dell reseller, HP reseller, and so we no longer build computers. But that was an evolution over time. So we've switched from a product-based business over to a service-based business, just because of the nature of the market. It's kind of funny. My daughter asked me to help her build a gaming machine, and I hadn't built a computer myself in probably 10 years. And so it
Mm.
was, relearning what that looks like. And some people still, from a hobbyist standpoint, you could buy parts on the internet and build your own computer,
Yeah.
which is fun to do. But certainly, build it or buying a Dell or an HP is, often a better deal today
Yeah.
than it was back then. It used to be kind of flopped that you could build your own machines. We could make a profit on building these computers, make them spec'd right for the clients, and then they become serviceable. A lot of times, your Dell or HP, they're not serviceable by the end user. They control the parts and the supply chain. And it gave us the option to say, okay, if you wanted a computer, we can build it, we can service it, we can maintain it for the life of the computer, without ever having to, call an 800 number somewhere.
Yeah.
And that was our value prop for
So it
that.
sounds like in the early days, you really had to be flexible in terms of what you're selling, and evolve your offerings. This is the late 90s, moving into the 2000s. There's the whole dot-com meltdown, and there's 9/11. What was that experience like for the company?
We certainly saw a little bit of it with people being scared of investing in technology inside their businesses, but it was actually somewhat of a growth phase for us, just because companies were at that point not connected to the internet on a mass scale. Maybe one or two users had a dial-up account, but we saw a big opportunity in the early 2000s to help companies get connected onto the internet. And that's where we went from just a break fix computer service shop to a combined managed services company that we were offering internet services, eventually voice over IP, along with our IT services in one complete package to our business clients. and a little bit shift away from, as I said before, from a product standpoint to a recurring services model, which is what we are today. So everything we do today revolves around providing a recurring service to our clients, being proactive and helping them with their technology needs rather than just a one-off project or selling a product. So
Right.
that's where our model dramatically changes in the early 2000s when we realized that there was a demand for a complete solution for these clients.
And from a business standpoint, you have a client for a longer period of time. It's not just one quick sale and they leave, you make whatever your margin is. You have a longer relationship with them.
We do, and it, put some onus on us to make sure that we're doing a great job. It's one of those things. The worse job we do, the more work we have, and that might be good if you're charging for time, if you're just time and materials. But in a reoccurring services model, the better we are, the more profit we can make because if we do a great job, we don't have to provide or spend as much time and labor on that customer.
Right.
So it really puts the onus on us to really nail down our service delivery model and have an excellent experience for the customer because they'll stay with us for 20, 30 years as we have
Now,
some customers.
now you're outside of Las Vegas. Las Vegas had this big boom in real estate and growth in the 2000s, and then after the global economic meltdown, so 2008 to 2012 kind of time period, it was a real downturn for the region. How did that affect you?
It's a big problem for us, honestly. We had a lot of clients in the construction industry, and as those clients either went out of business or really had to scale down their operations, it affected us considerably. And I remember a meeting, family meeting or board meeting or whatever you want to call it. It was the one and the same at the time, and in 2008, and we had to make some hard decisions on this small family company of how we were going to continue operating going forward. And, we made some tough decisions as a family. And, it ended up paying off just fine. And we actually grew through that period by refocusing some of our operations, cutting some costs, and, redoubling our efforts in industries that weren't as affected by the downturn. Certainly here in Las Vegas, construction, new home building, gaming was a downturn, and tourism. So focusing on other, professional services, things that would last, like,
Hmm.
legal and CPAs, medical. We brought in some products that we started reselling in the medical space, which was, always growing. That's always going to be there. We were able to stave off that downturn for us, but it took some tough decisions that we had to make as a company, call it an early on
Yeah.
company to grow through it.
How did you figure out in those early days, since you started this company with your dad and your brother, how did you figure out division of labor and who was going to handle what?
So my dad was mostly an advisor to the company. He only worked in the business for a couple of years. Actually, in that period, 2009 to 2011, he worked in the company full time. My brother and I did were doing most of the work through the initial part of the business, and we kind of divided labor up by customer. So we each had our set of customers that we were primarily focused on, knew them well, and did the work for those specific customers. But he actually left the company in 2002. One of our projects for a customer that we had was a software development project. We used to do software also, and
You run the gamut of every different type of IT service
we
under the
did,
sun.
we did. I mean, we were just trying to figure out how to make some
Yeah,
money early
sure.
on and pay for college. And both my brother and I were going through college at the time too. So we split that software development company into another business that my brother went to run. So in 2002, my brother left the company and I was left as the sole operator of Stimulus.
And
Um,
how did that change things for you? Was it still, was it a difficult adjustment?
it was a little bit because I had, two family members as business partners that were no longer operational partners in the business.
Yeah.
And, they had their own day-to-day demands on their time, whereas, I was operationally making the decisions. And I was in my young 20s
Yeah.
and I certainly hadn't gone to business school. I have a degree in computer science, bachelor's and master's degree in computer science, and they don't teach the stuff of how to run a business in computer science school. And
Yep.
so sometimes I made bad decisions and floundered along the way. How to get sales, how to maintain customers, these different business offerings. And one of the best decisions I made is in 2008, I hired a CEO coach,
Mm.
part of a CEO peer group, and really learned from the coach and the peers, the CEO peers in my group, of how to operate a business and how to scale a business. And that's been probably one of the pivotal decisions I made in the company of going that direction, of really learning how to move from, a lifestyle business, a hobby into, a real operational business that can scale. And without that decision, I wouldn't be where we're at today.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and that was at a time when 2008 when businesses were struggling.
Yeah.
So was that a pretty bold or difficult decision to make while your company was struggling?
It was one of those, dramatic changes that we decided to make at that time
Hmm.
and, refocus the business. So it is bold. I mean, I'm often willing to take some risks, probably sometimes more than I should with the business, but they tend to pay off because I'm very stubborn. So that's what another part of my personality is. I want to see things through. I'm very resilient to all the pressures, and it's hard, at times to have those constant demands from different aspects. The economy's doing this. Our customers are struggling, but we're gonna have this vision of where the company is going to go, and come hell or high water, we're going to get there.
Yeah. So COVID hits in 2020, 5 years ago now. How did that affect you at that point?
It was actually a boon for our business, as
Mm.
with a lot of technology providers. We were ideally ready, unbeknownst to ourselves, for the remote and the remote work and hybrid work, everything that we needed to do. And so, a lot of again, we moved away from servicing tourism and the businesses that were really affected by COVID. Luckily, a lot of our clients were essential services and in healthcare, legal, these businesses that had to continue operating. And so, luckily, we were an essential service provider in a lot of the areas that we serviced, and our clients were also. But they needed to continue operations in spite of these remote work requirements or stay-at-home requirements that the state instilled. And so we quickly had to help our clients move to 100% remote very quickly. And we met as a leadership team. We came up with some service plans, and within a couple of days, we had a comprehensive service offering to help our clients move from working in a brick and mortar location to 100% remote. And giving that option to our clients to say, hey, we'll be an essential provider to you. We're going to help you continue operations, and we'll help you do it efficiently through technology and not cost you a lot more. And a lot of our clients have, and including us, have stayed in a hybrid or remote model because we found it as or more efficient than having to go into the office every day.
Yeah.
So it's I think we were uniquely posed as a society because of technology, as things have moved to the cloud, as telecommunication services like Zoom or Teams had evolved enough, and as internet connectivity allowed for companies to work wherever or whenever they want. We were uniquely positioned as a society and then as a business to survive that. Now, brick and mortar stores, I mean, it's a lot harder if you have to have a retail location to operate,
Right.
and certainly hit a lot harder. And I'm very cognizant of a lot of businesses weren't as lucky as we were. So, uh, but
Yeah.
we were just the right place at the right time to take advantage of that type of growth.
Now, you recently got a $140 million grant to hook up 17,000 homes in Southern Nevada to the internet. I imagine this is kind of a rural area or something like that. Um, It sounds like me. I don't know if you had gotten grants previous to this, but that sounds like this was a big leap. How did that come about, and what kind of an impact was that when you got that grant?
Take some pre-planning to do this. We stay on top of what's going on in the political realm of the government. The federal government passed in 2022 a infrastructure bill, and part of that infrastructure bill was $42 billion set aside for internet connectivity for rural locations. And we realized, we had subscribers, customers in these rural areas, and we met as a leadership team and said, this is either a huge opportunity for us as a company or a company killer, one of the two, because in these areas where we service, as we service through fixed wireless technologies today, we had to now compete potentially against a provider that's coming in and getting government grants to build out fiber optic networks. And that's very disruptive, and it's hard to compete against, $42 billion worth of fiber build outs. And so we made a strategic move beginning of last year to set up the structure so that we could bid on these grant areas. We hired a consulting firm and put together our first grant application early last year, which was not one of these federal grants. It was a state grant, and we won that one. It was a much smaller one than this larger one. And then through the middle to the end of 2024, we spent time with this group and developing our proposal to the state of Nevada for one of these infrastructure grants, and won about 85% of the areas where we bid on for this grant project. So we were overjoyed and also very nervous because this is a huge project for us, something that we haven't done before. But we're very excited about it, and it's created a lot of opportunity for the company, but to a lot of challenges as we have to scale up now to deploy this project successfully. We've also continued to bid on and hopefully win other projects in some of the other states that we operate. We're in 5 different states, so we're currently working on additional applications in the other locations. So we might end up having more than this. But we realized that we had to protect our existing infrastructure, our existing business, and then provide even better services to our existing clients and future clients by offering fiber optic internet services rather than our fixed wireless. So it was either a business killer or a business accelerator, and we decided to focus on the acceleration efforts.
And it's another example of, if you're going to be a 30-year-old technology company, you've got to innovate, you got to change, you got to evolve with the times. And you certainly are doing that.
Yeah, I think any business has to evolve and change, but in the technology industry, there's not a day that goes by that there's not something that we have to do differently. AI, the generative AI that's come out in the last couple of years is certainly changing the type of service that we have to deliver to our clients too. And so, constantly looking at opportunities, but also the opportunities can be threats to our business.
Yeah.
And so we're always balancing that out. And there's no other industry other than technology that has that much change happening that fast.
Yeah, especially now. Nathan, this has been really interesting. Thanks so much for your time. Where can people go to learn more about you and learn more about your company?
So Stimulus Technologies, you can find us at stimulustech.com. Best way to find me is on LinkedIn. So you can search up my name, Nathan Whittacre. I also wrote a book a few years ago on how CEOs can use technology to enhance their businesses. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn and just mention the book, I'd be happy to send you a free hard copy of the book.
And you have a podcast as well.
I do. So if you can find us at Stimulus Tech Talk on any of the major podcast channels, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the major ones.
Excellent. Nathan, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.